Good morning, everybody. I know you're thinking, who's the guy with a shirt on that looks like a circus tent? That's me, Andrew. I'm the youth pastor here. It's a nice shirt. It's not bad. My wife bought it for me. No, yeah, she did. Yep. I'm excited to speak this morning on the topic is humility and hope. So it should be really good. I'm really good at speaking at humility. Thanks for laughing at that joke. I'll keep that for the next one. Shout out Jay, giving me that one. Thank you. No, this is probably going to be a worse sermon ever now. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. We're preaching on the story of the woman at the well, and our youth group, our youth ministry is called The Well. We kind of have that title, and the story of the woman at the well is a big piece of it. It's a big piece of our theme, and as we kind of go into it, I'll talk a little bit about it. But the last time, like a few months ago or so, I think I spoke on this and spoke more on it, but being able to come and to be filled with Jesus, right? Of him being the living water, and we'll get into that. But I want to ask as I'm up here, for you guys to remain in prayer, to continue for prayer, to start praying for the amazing things that are happening through our youth and through our kids within this church. It's such a beautiful thing to see all sorts of kids around doing worship and to see the multi-generational worship here. It's awesome. And in our youth ministry, this year God has been doing amazing things through these students. And we've seen so much growth that God has been doing in their lives. We have a leadership kind of team of students who we just sort of pick within each year of who is able, maybe spiritually mature enough to be able to lead others through Christ. And man, they're diving deep. We have two girls, Evelyn and Mackenzie, who help lead our 8th grade small groups. And it's been so awesome just to hear their testimonies from this. Of high school girls being fully unashamed of the gospel. And I don't know if you've hung out with junior high girls or junior hires at times. They are ruthless. But being able to come and being unashamed of the gospel, of telling their testimony and leading, and it's been so amazing to see the growth and excitement in that. We have other students who are coming to just attend church on a Sunday morning, just them. I was saying, this is really important to me, and maybe my family doesn't come here or go anywhere, but I'm going to be here and getting a ride here. And that's crazy. As a teenager, I did not do that. I went to the traditional service with my parents and fell asleep a lot. Not a little, but like a lot. But an amazing thing to see that at such a young age of knowing the importance of Christ in their life, of knowing the importance of like coming and worshiping together, coming to a church. And so I ask that you continue to pray for our youth as amazing things are happening. So, like I said this morning, I'm going to be preaching on the story of the woman at the well. And so as I was thinking about this and reading this story this week and talking to Tom about it, I thought a lot more about the perspective of the woman within this story. It's a true story, historical story. The Bible is not made up of a bunch of make-believe stories to give us lessons, true things that actually happen. And I feel like God, for me, over the past like a couple months or so, as I'm reading in the Bible, and I'm reading through a gospel right now in my own devotional time, he's really pointing out the attributes of the people that he picks to be able to grow his kingdom, to start the biggest movement in human history. And so as we're kind of reading through this, I want you to pay attention to some of the attributes, and one of the attributes of being humility that the woman at the well brings. So you can read with me. I'm going to start with verse 4. So it says, "Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back to once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria." Samaria at the time, and so Jesus is in Judea, right? And going back to Galilee with all of his disciples, and a lot of times, Jewish people at the time, there was obviously a clear cut through Samaria. You could travel there, took way less time to travel on foot to go through. But at the time, the Jews would not go through Samaria because of a lot of racial things that were happening between them and the Samaritans. And so it was a shorter route, but Jesus, it says, we had to go through Samaria. So we came to town in the Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of the ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from his journey, sat down by the well, and it was about noon. I want you to remember the time. It was about noon. It was a very specific time that I think that God put in the Gospels. It doesn't really tell much time of other things, but very specific of being in noon. When the Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. So we meet the Samaritan woman. Earlier in this in the text, it said, now he had to go through Samaria. He had to. Not that he wanted to because it was a shorter route. Not even because he wanted to because it was like a really beautiful trip. I remember I went to college in North Park in Chicago, and you had to drive through Ohio. I didn't want to drive through Ohio. It's not nice. But sorry if you're from Ohio. But I had to drive through Ohio, right? He had to, not that he wanted to, or even that he was like just looking for maybe an opportunity was going to come up in Samaria. No, it says he had to go through Samaria. He picked this woman very specifically. He had to. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Like I said, there was a big racial difference at the time. Jews they had a lot of racism towards the Samaritans, mostly because Samaritans were kind of half Jewish and half Assyrian. At times, they was conquered by all sorts of different people in this area, and it ended up being kind of a mix of a lot of different people. And so, also, the people at the time were kind of taking like the Jewish religion and then other aspects of different religions and trying to make it one, and Jews really took a lot of offense to this. And so they did not associate with Samaritans even a little bit. But Jesus at the time, not caring and being so much bigger than the racism of the time. As a rabbi, him speaking to a woman like that also was extremely unorthodox, being bigger than the racism and the sexism of the time, of talking to her exactly where she was. A divine interaction with this woman. He had to. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water?" I want to remember the amount of questions she asks. "Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming back here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You were right when you say that you have no husband. The fact is that you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim the place where you must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus said, Believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. So we had to meet this woman. And I personally think, that he chose this woman as it continues on in these verses, continues on that she kind of knows, he proclaims that he is Christ, that he is the Messiah here to save people from their sins. And then she continues on and goes and tells all the people and brings so many people to Christ. But I think that he chose her because of humility. I think as you look through all of the people that Jesus chose, he wasn't choosing like some big-time leaders, even some like big-time really good leaders. He wasn't choosing the governors or the kings or whoever to like proclaim his good news. He wasn't even choosing like the high priests or like the really good pastors of the time. He chose this woman who's in an extremely humble situation. Not using the pride or the prideful. At the Sermon on the Mount, which is like the first big sermon, the biggest sermon of Jesus' the Gospels. But the first thing that Jesus says is a few things, about 12 things of how we should be and how we should act. The first one in Matthew 5 says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." And I feel like she hits all of these. Coming to a space, and she was coming to this well at noon, not a great time. It is very hot at the time, very hot in that area, coming alone also. Most of the women at the time loved going to get water because it was a time to where they could talk freely, speak to each other freely. Within that culture, a lot of times they couldn't talk in a space like that when it's like around in society. They had to speak when they were spoken to. And so going to the well was an absolute privilege and usually a time to where a lot of women were coming together to do it. The second thing is they would do it early in the morning when it wasn't so hot. Significant that they put that she was coming at noon. Knowing that she's alone in life. You can see through a lot of divorces in life of trying to do life on her own will, but it obviously is not working out. Poor in spirit, meaning that you know that you are nothing. She was in this space of like rock bottom in her life. Knowing that like she needs God. She cannot do this life on her own. The next one, of those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Of mourning our sin in life, of knowing like, oh man, this really does not bring me anything. Mourning, I'm sure that through 5 divorces is pretty rough. And the next thing, of blessed are the meek. And this word, I forgot it. I tried to look it up this morning of how to pronounce it in Greek. I forgot. I'm not going to try. And but this Greek word of meek is a hard one to translate into English. Of you would probably think of like someone who's just very like quiet and isn't very strong-willed, but it actually means to have strong self-control. Meek of you can get angry, but you're not lashing out. Maybe you can get very excited or be able to boast in something good that you're doing, but you're not overly confident or cocky. I'm being confident. And those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Through all of this, so many questions, you can see she is searching. Are we searching, church, knowing that we can't do any of this on our own accord? She came in a humble position. And now I'm not calling us to be in a humble position to be like, have our lives be completely destroyed and have to be at rock bottom to be able to humble ourselves with Christ. But Jesus is calling us to fully lose ourselves, to fully gain ourselves. Jesus is calling us to be poor in spirit, to know that we can't do anything without him. I can't even stand up here and breathe. I can barely stand. My ACL is in half. Without Jesus, I can't do anything. And you can see for her where she's at in life, completely alone, completely as an outcast, when she's trying to do life on her own power, on her own accord. And Jesus sees this, meets her right where she is, knows that she's not going to have all this pride to get in the way of what he has for her. We are called to humble ourselves. We are called, I like on Ash Wednesday when they do like the ashes on the forehead, right? Of like, we are made from dust and we will return to dust. And that doesn't sound the most uplifting of like, I'm just dirt. But it's kind of freeing in a way. Of knowing that we are nothing without Jesus. And it's freeing because Jesus is completely for us and not against us. It's freeing because Jesus loves us. It's freeing because Jesus is going to protect us in life. It's freeing because Jesus is going to give us power to overcome all sorts of temptation in our life, all sorts of situations in our life. It's freeing because we don't have to try to do all of this alone, because we have Jesus. James Barry, a great quote, it says, "Life is a long lesson in humility." We are called to fully lose ourselves, to be poor in spirit, to know that we are nothing without God, and we start there. That life is a long lesson in humility. For myself, a great example was, so I went to North Park University. I transferred there to go to college. And so I was trying to make friends, and I was trying to fit in. It's tough to transfer as or like going into your junior year, because a lot of times people already have like their friends groups. People already have the people that like they're hanging out with. So it's hard to like kind of get in all of that. And so I was making some friends, knew a few people. I had a friend, he was 6'11". He still is, not was 6'11", he still is 6'11". Yeah, he's tall. He's really tall. He used the beds in college, first off, just the worst in the dorms, right? But they like were at his knees. The end of it, just brutal. But he obviously played a little basketball. I am really bad at basketball. I'm just not good at it. And so he had, a few of his friends had an intramural team, and they were missing a few people and needed a sub, and so he asked me to play, and I was like, sure, I'll come play basketball with you. And so I was thinking like just a really low-key intramural basketball game. The gym has 3 different like basketball courts on it. Our game was the last one of the night. So literally everyone was watching our game. I looked out of place. I was looking like a newborn giraffe out there trying to run around, and I didn't have basketball shoes on. I just had like some normal tennis shoes, and I don't know. I did okay, so I gained a little confidence as I was playing, and it was a really close game, and I get pretty competitive, and so I made a couple shots. I was like, man, I'm doing pretty well, right? I think I'm getting pretty good at this. And then it was the last play of the game. We were down by one, and there was an out-of-bounds play, so where we got the ball on the far end of the court. And so the guy who's 6'11", very good at basketball, was throwing in the ball. When I looked at the clock, it said 5 seconds when I looked at it. And I didn't realize they put more time on it when it went out of bounds. And so I'm thinking, I have 5 seconds. The rest of my team is pretty gassed because they're all large football players. And it was at the end of the game. And so I run around, and he throws the inbound ball to me. I'm like dribbling down the court, and I get to about halfway, and I shoot it, and I put it up, and it felt pretty good. And then I heard behind me, no! And so my shot that felt pretty good, hit the top of the backboard, not even like anywhere near the hoop, just the top, like the wires that hang to the backboard. It hit that and then went out of bounds. It was a terrible shot, the worst shot of all time. Tons of people are watching, like a lot of people. And I'm new and then wanted to throw up. And so I missed this terrible shot, and I hear behind me the guy, his name is John, just like, no. And I look at the clock, and there was 15 seconds. I shot the ball with 15 seconds to go at half court, and I lost us the game. We all lost. Yeah, it was really horrible experience. And so it was a wonderful reminder for me, though, as I was thinking of this story, as I thought in that game that I could take over, that my plan for this was better than everyone else's plan. And for myself, I know that I have done life like that sometimes, to where I've said no to God of no, I'm probably not going to do this. I'm not going to give you my time. I'm not going to, and it maybe it's a subconscious no of kicking myself in the butt for this as I'm talking about humility. Yesterday, I went to a gas station, and there was this woman who was checking me out at the, I was buying stuff, I put my things on the counter, and she did the money thing. Humble. She rang me up, there we are, and but was telling me all about her life at the moment. Of her kid had to go to the ER this past week, and so she had to leave work early to go drive her kid to the hospital from school, and that she got written up for it, and she really needs this job. And myself thinking, I didn't even have anywhere to go. I was just I just want to go home. Please, I don't honestly really want to hear this. And so I was yeah, sure. Put my credit card in, signed for it. And I was all right, well, good luck with that. And then walked out. If I would have just humbled myself and said, you know what, God, you have so much more planned for this situation. Humbling myself of my time is no much better than if I would have just stayed and talked to her for a sec. Or said, hey, can I pray for you? I realize you're going through a tough time right now. And the impact that could have had, instead of saying, good luck, but humbling myself and saying, man, I need to know these divine interruptions that God has for me, that sometimes we miss because our pride is in the way. And it's not even a pride I was feeling like I was better than, but just a pride that my time was worth more to just go home. But God had a plan there that I pretty much failed on. Divine interruptions. I had another situation to where we had a neighborhood kid who loves just to come and talk to Kaylee and I, knew him through church and stuff, and just a wonderful spot to be able to love on the kids who are a part of our programs and stuff. And so I had a neighborhood kid come up, and we were trying to go to a friend's house for a Bills game, and Nora was in the back of the car trying to sleep, and so Kaylee was running in to grab something at the house, and so we were rushing around, had a place to be, and all of a sudden I hear on the window, and the kid's just standing there like this. And a divine interruption to where thankfully we succeeded in this one, of staying and talking with him. And just loving on this kid. Of knowing that God has so many of these spaces in our life to where we need to humble ourselves and say, God, you have a plan for this. I need to humble myself and know that I don't need to rush out to get out to a friend's house to go watch the Bills or whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is what you have for me right here and right now. A space that Jesus knew he had this divine interruption. And a space for this woman who humbled herself, who was in a spot in life to where there was nowhere else to turn but to know what Jesus has. Knowing that she was going through a lot on her own accord, that she needed Jesus, that thirst for righteousness. And I think for all of us, it starts with humbling ourselves in a lot of different ways, of even in our prayer, of not bringing our own agendas to our prayer. Of not bringing our own, like, God, I need this. I pray for this person to do this. I pray for all of these things. We bring all this stuff instead of just sitting at the feet of Jesus and letting him meet us where we are in life. Or maybe God has a reason we're going through a storm. Maybe God has a reason that we're going through a tough lesson in life. But just sitting and stopping. Instead of trying to talk our way through a prayer so we get a little bit of relief at the end of it, just to sit and let God do what he does in our life, to humble ourselves, to be poor in spirit, to fully lose ourselves, to fully gain ourselves. Or a space like I've talked about of humbling ourselves to be able to love the people around us when it's easy or when it's hard. Space to humble ourselves to be able to forgive those who have really wronged us in our life. As we shouldn't carry this burden or this anger with us for so long. God's calling us to humble ourselves, to forgive like he forgives us. Not to try to do things from our own power. The woman said, I know that Messiah called Christ. He is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. So the woman at the well came back to her people and she's saying this. And Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, am he. Jumping down to verse 39, many of the Samaritans from the town believed in him because of this woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. When we start with humility in life, it turns into hope. When we start at the basis with humility in our relationship with Christ, it turns into hope. This woman, even of not getting defensive when Jesus points out her sins, not getting defensive of saying like, whoa, you don't know my situation, you don't know what I'm going through, you don't know me at all, why are you telling me this? I'm saying, I know I've sinned. I know I'm in a tough space in life. And then repenting and turning from that sin and humbly saying, I'm not going to be ashamed of the gospel. Coming to these people, and can you imagine going into Bemis and being like, hey, this person is the Messiah. A lot of people would think, whoa, this person's super crazy. But humbling yourself and knowing that Jesus had such a bigger plan for her life and seeing the fruit that came out of that, seeing the hope that she first had in her life and that she was able to bring to so many people because of the humble position she started with. Verse 40, so when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. Starts with humbling ourselves. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The one space that Jesus reveals the characteristics of his heart, gentle and humble. Fully losing ourselves to fully gaining ourselves. I love that in this it says that Jesus stayed for 2 days. It didn't need to have that. But often I've been revealed from God of there's so many of these little snippets through the gospel of like he stayed and he ate dinner with them. He stayed at their house and hung out with them. He stayed for 2 days and just was with them. And your life, if you have a space to where you need to be able to, that you've been maybe struggling with, or a situation that you've been struggling with, how do you get through it? It says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. Coming to Jesus with a humble heart, knowing that we are nothing without him. that Jesus is going to transform your mind, your body, your life, the people around you, your attitude, how you love people, your marriage, everything about you only through Jesus. So church, this morning, I invite you to come to Jesus, poor in spirit, with a humble heart to see where God will take you. Please pray with me. God, it's a scary prayer to ask to be humbled. But God, I pray that it would start with our hearts, to be able to humble ourselves, to know that we need you for literally everything. I pray that we can put down all of our burdens, put down all of our worries, all of the situations that have just been heavy in our hearts, God. Knowing that you are so much bigger than all of those, that you are in control. Help us to have a gentle and humble heart just like you, Lord. To know that your burden is light in our life. To come and to relax into you, Jesus. Amen. So go, church, this morning. Humble ourselves. Giving God our time. And finding God in those divine interruptions. So go and love his people. Thank you.